Have you ever really stopped to think about what power actually is? I mean, it's a word we throw around all the time, but its face is always changing. Today, we're going to peel back the layers and look at how power is really wielded, from the brute force of a conqueror's sword all the way to the quiet, invisible influence of a digital algorithm. Let's dive in. So let's start with this chilling idea from our own time. Analyst Shoshana Zuboff talks about a new kind of power, one that doesn't need to storm the castle gates. Instead, it just rewrites the rules from the inside, quietly taking over our sovereignty, our basic right to choose for ourselves. It feels so unnervingly modern, right? But is it really new?
And that's the big question we're digging into. To really get a handle on the power of today, we have to look back at the power of yesterday. So let's go on a little journey and trace the different masks that power has worn throughout history.
All right, first up, the oldest, most obvious face of power. We're talking about raw, physical force. This is power in its most direct and, honestly, its most brutal form. This is power at its most absolute. It's the power to make people obey because they fear pain, or being exiled, or even death. This is the bread and butter of conquerors and emperors, a tool that has built empires and shattered countless lives all through human history. And this isn't just some dusty, ancient history. Take this quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. The Gulag, in the 20th century, was coercive power on an industrial scale. The state's power here wasn't just about controlling bodies. It was a massive machine designed to completely crush the human spirit. But what's really striking is when you put that right next to this quote from Howard Zinn describing the forced removal of the Creek Nation in America. The imagery is it's horrifying. It shows that this kind of brutal, coercive power isn't locked into one ideology or one nation. It's a tragic pattern that we see again and again in the building of states. Okay, so force is incredibly powerful, no doubt about it. It breaks bodies and spirits. But relying on it is also kind of crude, and it's hard to sustain. Which leads us to wonder, is there a more subtle, maybe even more lasting form of control out there? So what if power isn't about an army at all? What if it's about an organization? What if it's the infrastructure, the bureaucracy, all the systems that shape our lives without us even realizing it? Right, this is the power of the planner, the administrator, the power broker. These folks don't need to threaten you with violence. No. Instead, they reshape the world by controlling the flow of money, of information, even of concrete. They are literally building the stage that we all live our lives on. And this slide is basically the playbook. Robert Moses became one of the most powerful men in America, and he was never elected to a major office. How did he do it? Well, you can see right here. He created these public authorities that were outside the direct control of voters. He controlled their money, he hoarded all the expertise, and then he used all that leverage to physically rebuild New York City exactly how he wanted. Now, what's really fascinating is to compare Moses's modern, almost technical kind of power with a really ancient system, like Imperial China. I mean, on the surface, they look totally different. But when you get down to it, both of them got their power from controlling a huge, complex, centralized system that everybody else depended on. Whether it's a web of public authorities or a massive imperial bureaucracy, the system itself becomes the source of power. But power doesn't just come from brute force or bureaucratic structures. Sometimes, the most powerful force in the entire world is just an idea. This is what we call ideological power. It's the ability to capture hearts and minds, to paint a picture of the world that is so compelling that millions of people will rise up to make it real. This is the kind of power that can bring down the very empires that force and structure built in the first place. I mean, listen to these words from Thomas Paine. They're electric. The idea that the people are sovereign, that the rules of a nation belong to the nation itself, that was a world-changing concept. It's the perfect example of a liberating idea that fueled democratic revolutions and empowered ordinary people. But here's the thing. The power of an idea is neutral. It can be used for any purpose. As this slide points out, the historian Eric Hobsbawm described fascism as a revolution of counter-revolution. It also gets people excited. It mobilizes the masses from the ground up, appealing to a sense of victimhood and promising a total transformation. But it channels all that energy toward oppression and destroying democracy.
So, the big takeaway here is that the engine of ideological power is always mass mobilization. Where it goes, whether it builds a better world or a more tyrannical one, that depends entirely on the idea at its core. Okay, so we've looked at power as force, power as structure, and power as an idea. Now, let's bring it all back to the present day and see what face power is wearing in our digital world. Hey, remember that quote we started with? The one about an overthrow of the people's sovereignty? Now that we have these tools, these historical frameworks, let's take another look at this thing Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism. Now, according to Zuboff, this new kind of power isn't just trying to sell you stuff. Its goals are way, way bigger than that. It wants to mine our lived experiences for raw data, use that data to predict what we'll do next, and then, and this is the crazy part, to actually intervene and shape our behavior. Essentially, to claim a right to our future for its own profit. And this slide, this is where it all clicks into place. Just look at how this new power is a hybrid of all the forms we've been talking about. It's coercive, kind of like the Gulag, but instead of physical force, it uses automated systems to nudge and modify our behavior. It's structural, like Robert Moses's authorities, but its architecture is the inescapable digital platforms we all live on. And it's ideological, like a revolution, because it's driven by this powerful, seductive promise of a perfectly personalized, convenient, connected world. That combination is exactly what makes it so new and so powerful. It blends the raw efficiency of coercion, the subtle control of a hidden structure, and the appeal of an ideology. It's so effective because it often feels completely invisible. It shapes our choices without us even realizing it, inside systems we rely on every day, all while selling us a vision of a better, easier life. It's working at a scale and with a level of personal intimacy that past emperors could have only dreamed of. Which leaves us all with a final, pretty unsettling question. By understanding these old faces of power, the soldier, the bureaucrat, the revolutionary, we can finally see the new face that's staring back at us from our screens. So the real question is, once we recognize it, what do we do about it?